This is an appeal to all doctors. And we sometimes think that we can pour cold water instead of human blood, and everything will be okay. Oh yes, this is my favorite topic. Then you have abscess. Well, yes. Well, if you deviate from protocol, then as they say, a person has a chance to deviate. Partial traumatic amputation of the phalanx of the little finger. Have blood. Cross. And then it's like this, and it's already going now, right? No, it's just about what you pointed out, that there are questions about the type of work of a combat doctor, the work of a medical center and a medical company. These are completely different jobs. It depends on the experience, on whether a person has an experience. It can be said that first it is just a fighter, not a doctor, who provides first aid to the wounded. Then there is already a combat doctor, after which he is sent to the VAC case to the stop point. Or he is transferred to mid-evac, and from mid-evac he is sent to the stop point. And after the stop point he is already sent to the hospital. Well, for example, roughly speaking, if there is a wounded fighter on the position, first aid is provided to him by his partner, who is nearby by, I don't know, this is the first aid. Then a combat medic arrives. He already does a little more. Also, from the position, roughly speaking, in the red zones, a combat medic works. A combat medic, he is already transferred to the VAC case. The VAC case is such a machine that flies up to a hot place, intercepts the wounded, and takes him either to the stop point or to the transfer to mid-evac. Mid-evac is such a thing where the higher the level, the greater the access to medical manipulations. It turns out to be an ordinary fighter, a combat medic, a VAC case, or a stop point. And after that comes the hospital thing. Well, it all depends on the wound. And if a person has a very light wound there, then, in principle, he can even skip the stage of a combat medic, that is, a platoon medic. That is, he is immediately sent to the VAC case and to the stop point, and that's it. That is, even mid-evac may not be required. It is, everything depends on the needs, on the nature of the wound. I actually said a phrase that I once heard from a smart paramedic, that a combat medic, a medic evacuation medic, a medic stop point are not at different levels of one game. These are just different games. That is, it is a completely different pool of obligations. In fact, one of the biggest skills for me as a medic of the VAC case stage is the ability to change the wheel. Like, really, to change the wheel, and in any case, I don't know. Well, in short, to deal with your card. And this is obviously a very specific skill. This skill does not have it at all in a medic stop point, and it should not be there. Just like in a combat medic, there are also very specific skills. That is, a combat medic is for people who are more suited for some soldier work, for the specific performance of a combat task, and in the meantime they are still ready to take on a medical function. The tactical evacuation stage, the VAC case stage, is a stage of such a quick reaction. To go quickly, more technically, to technically carry out a good protocol. That is, to learn it, not to leave it, and to technically carry it out. At the moment when you are already a medic, this is a more creative medical stage. That is, when you can make difficult decisions, medical decisions, and this stage really requires basic medical knowledge. This is rather the level of skills training. Like, if a person has come from scratch, then it makes no sense to throw him into a stop point or at the hospital level, because he has no idea that, even at the level of a VAC, difficult situations arise. To make a quick decision, It depends on whether a person wants to grow. I can say, from my own experience, I was a driver in 2015. I was just curious to sit and listen to the courses. 1, 2, 3. And it happened that I had to help. After that, I was more often in the crew. I was with the guys in the trench. I helped. And so the level grew a little. I can say as a doctor of the first line of VAC, as a doctor of CASEVAC, that in my opinion, this is the stage where you do not need to put in a really specialized medical personnel. I saw the units where I try to push anesthesiologists, surgeons on CASEVAC. This is complete nonsense. I will say something wrong, but it is very expensive. Yes, very expensive. If we talk about the stage 100, I would point to those people who really have the skills to work in an emergency room. It does not matter if it's an anesthesiologist, a surgeon. It can be an emergency nurse, but just people who have seen at least an emergency. They have experience and skills. Well, yes, at least some education. The experience of working there at the age of 15. It would be great to put such people on the stand. Speaking of experience, there are very few of them. I see some sense. Even if the doctor is fast and the doctor is in an emergency, you can sit on this thing on medevac and you can work with it, but not in the case. Well, I would not sit in the case. There is no point in sitting in the case. I'm in the case, this person. If we say that he does not need help in the trench, but this is the level of a first aid kit. Well, excuse me. Yes, first aid kit, backpack, everything. In the case, you can still pull out your saliva. I'm in the case, you can also pull out your saliva. Well, it's still a case. Well, saliva is still a case for me. No. The aspiration of the easy ones, the aspiration of the spiritual paths. Well, this is not a case. Cooking is delicious. Well, in general, cooking, food is generally a separate topic. I think there should be a person in the crew, in the warehouse of several crews, who somehow cooks normally, so that it could be eaten. Well, when we were in Mariki, there was a driver in the crew. He is a master at everything. He always had something to master. We had a girl, Yula. She always cooked. Because medics, they are de facto, as a rule, a little bit away from everyone. The ability to cook. Topography, probably, still. Well, yes. Topography is probably the most important thing. Because you will need to drive up to some point. And you need to know how you will drive up there. You need to know what points to drive to. What coordinates? Because coordinates can be set by absolutely anyone. That is in order to be able to intercept a person. Well, at least you just need to have it. The most basic skills. Tourism, so to speak, in order to simply be able to exist autonomously. That is, you have a certain group, and you are in this group all the time, and you have to be at least a person who knows everything. But the best thing is when everyone in your group knows what to do, so that you can work autonomously in the group and understand each other in this regard. Because understanding is communication. This is the most important thing. What to replace and what happens. In my crew, for example, we do not talk at all about the process of work. Everyone knows what he is doing, and he understands that he has to do everything, with no phrase. Maybe I exaggerate, but I stretch my hand. I need scissors, for example. I don't say anything, and I'm already working. This is very cool, and it is called at the same moment. As an evacuation medic, I understood how many swimming pools there are, in general, when you deal with such equipment, because if it goes out of order somewhere in the middle of the road, and you are injured, and you do not understand what to do now, where to run, Then a person who can understand what happened to her quickly changes the wheel. It's like Formula One, because it's really scary. You will not stand there, lift the jack half an hour, watch all this. You will, but you just want to do it quickly. And also work with electricity. All these electronic systems come out of order unexpectedly. There is always a possibility to drive it away. For example, if we live in an ideal world where we have a refrigerator with blood, and we have 5 doses of blood, which are priceless, and if this refrigerator breaks, you have to do something urgently to make it work. This is a skill of driving. It seems to me that it really should be for everyone. In principle, all crews have. Well, it is not ideal to take it to the level and go. But in any case, it should be in the medical staff, in the combat medics. Because the moment when you need to give a blow, it happens often. And there is not always a possibility to use the driver himself. Fast legs, as they say, are not afraid of anything. Tactical combat casualty care is what? Advertising. In fact, what is written in blood? The experience. March, it works. But again, this is not your follow-up action. But again, this is subjective. This is a good recommendation for action. Yes, because sometimes some say, well, you need to strictly follow the protocol. If a person has an understanding, first of all, there should be an understanding of these recommendations of actions. You do not always act as you need to. As the protocol says, we are talking about follow-up actions. We are not talking about the actual idea of the actual action with your experience. Working with trauma, it really happens. And we do this at the level of combat medical corpsmen. Because when we go through this standard course, it tells you that at this stage, you have to think. You are not going to follow the protocol. You think. In fact, there is no more protocol, except for different variations of the protocol of different levels. All service members, you can think of a bicycle so that the star is not on the right side, but on the left side. At least if a person who does not have any medical education and everything else. This is just an ordinary fighter who has passed the platoon doctor course. Then, without deviating, for example, from the protocol or returning to it back when he was stupid, he can provide enough normal pre-medical assistance in order to bring him alive to the hospital. The first line, they have to work according to the protocol. Anyway, a doctor, whether on a case or not, he must take responsibility for his manipulations. And when a person leaves the protocol, this is a different way of thinking. A person must understand that he is a robot. If you leave the protocol, you can say that a person has a chance to leave. Look, a person who has a medical education, who worked, maybe he was somehow miraculously put in a case evac, or he just works in medevac, then this is a person who can improvise. A person who did not have any education before he went to serve and got into medevac case evac, then without deviating from the protocol, he will at least bring the wounded person to the hospital alive. All the guidelines of the committee that writes guidelines on various levels. This is real evidence of medicine. There is a crazy statistical base, such a great one, because sometimes our people who did not become medevac gained their experience, their great medical experience, working with a civil trauma, is trying to drag into a military trauma. In fact, first of all, they are in civilian. This is a specific example. And we always gave physical education, and everything is fine, and we always brought him. And the fact that the devils brought him to the next step, and he has experience. He says to you, without medical education, I have 15 years of surgical practice, and what will you tell him? A person who comes here with education, he must understand that When he will be trained here, and when he will be trained in 3, then he just needs to forget absolutely about what he was taught in a medical institution, about what he was taught somewhere in a university. He studies the new protocol and works only on it. And thanks to the fact that he will work only on this protocol, there will be a greater probability that a person will be brought alive to the hospital, where he will have already specialized surgical help and everything else. Well, we were just talking today at the very beginning, only once. Well, the next steps, that will be, well, this is of course a nightmare. No, well, it is necessary to say, from this qualified point of view, the earth is what? The earth is mud. There are bacteria. Then if we touch the earth, as Rico said, it will be the last time. Then there will be sepsis, abscess, and he will just die. However, the bloodstream, I think it will stop. If you touch the earth with it, it will just be a pressure. But the consequences of these actions will be very, very painful, because he will die. I'm not sure if it will stop, because the earth is like that. It will stop, it will stop. Dispersed system, you know that you stuffed it there. No, it will dissolve in the blood. You will close the wound. You will create pressure. There will be pressure. Blood flow will be controlled. The consequences of these actions, yes, just consequences. Why consequences? Because our evacuation wing can stretch until 12 o'clock, and at least it can be some kind of environment in which people will not be able to provide good enough medical help, antibiotics, pierce, wash him completely, the whole body, from all this, and the person will die. In our realities in Ukraine, it is undesirable to do this. Just this question. More precisely, this question was probably asked by the person who heard it from some foreign instructors who are just oriented on their experience in Afghanistan, in Iraq, where they have an evacuation wing for only an hour, and they can just bring a guy to the hospital and wash him quickly there, do everything he needs. That is, they have an evacuation wing, thanks to the fact that they have no air defense, they have good aviation, good cover, and everything else. Like, it just gives them this time to send a person quickly with the earth into the wound instead of a banana. I know it's good to have a door, to make a door, then wind it up for beauty on the butt and put it there. Well, this is when you use an air conditioner so that you can make it softer. Yes, yes. Although, as far as I know, now Burma seems to be making an air conditioner that does not dry out. But I only heard it. Well, you can get married. And what does it change? Not that on the rights of advertising. Sam's tourniquet is the best thing I have seen in my life. Well, yes, yes. I also have this yellow one. Yes, yes, cool. I love them very much. And they are easier for because you did 2 or 3 turns. And that's it. This is just beauty. Sam's tourniquets are on the rights of advertising. There are also Keats. But Sam is even more beautiful. You know, like a toy. Like a real leather. There are tourniquets that should be certified by the test committee. That is, the protocol itself recommends using only certified tourniquets, to which we refer to Sishin. Soft Sam Key. Then there is also this Spas. Yes, too, a good tourniquet. For me, life is Spas. Soft. How to distinguish them? Well, at least there is a marking. A special code is written on the marking, and according to this special code, You can check on the manufacturer's website if this tourniquet is original or not. Well, throw it away. Well, at least, as on the cat tourniquets, they have a code. Each tourniquet has its own unique code that can be checked. In general, earlier we talked about that on Chinese tourniquets, they are white here, but the Chinese began to fake them. Very well faked. Yes, very well faked. There will be, how to say it correctly, branding. Branding, yes, and on the back side, here the same, there will be engraving, branding. Well, you should not buy tourniquets at some crossroads. There are specialized stores where you can just request certification for this product. This is generally ideal. You come to the store, you see that they are selling tourniquets. You can directly say if you have a certification of this product and whether this tourniquet has passed the certification of the committee, and they are obliged to provide you with all these documents for this product. If it coincides, that is, the list can be viewed on the same DIPLOM-DIS website of the committee of certified manufacturers. I refer to this. The tourniquet will not cost 300 to 600 won. A tourniquet is always, well, at least I saw 1400. Again, in my opinion, I saw Semovsky for 1400 or 1200. Well, that's it. Well, it's clearly not 600 won. Oh yes, this is my favorite topic. In fact, this is the task of Medrota. There is a specialized piece in the Medrota brigade where we treat all patients and so on. That is, this is not even a function of the medical center, because when they drop you off at the medical center, I always have hysterics. When you go to your own medical center, and there you lie to drip. But in fact, this should be done by Medrota. But of course, this will not always be the case. Sometimes you will be the only person who generally has medicines. I always carry such a first aid kit in my bag, you know, the standard one. Yes. Because anyway, the guys come. They understand. They do not ask, you are a medical therapist or something. They have whole understanding. You are a doctor. That's it you have. They come to you and say, I have something else there. Help me. And they look at you and understand that, damn, you are the only one who can help. And what, I'll say no? Well, how not? Give the horizontal bar. You can provide yourself with help. In the basic sense, the same coldness, or a stomach upset, or vice versa. Constipation, then a doctor, a combat doctor in my opinion, should know about this. Well, the elementary thing is the same, of course, because why? Lead a fighter, roughly speaking, from the front edges to the rear. If he has just an ordinary upset stomach, well, if he is upset, gave a loperamide, watched him, and that's it. But again, it is important to understand. It is best to contact Medrota and consult, because, well, there are different symptoms. Why the cause, the consequences. This is also understandable. Suddenly it's a rotavirus there, or some other infection, or it's just, well, a type of cough. Well, at least in most cases, that I can help. I always called Rip and asked what to do, where to take him. Telemedicine, finally. We introduced him. By the way, there was a girl, Azov, who at the beginning of the war walked a lot on her hands, and they were all changed to medical. And I really liked the moment. This is what the Jedi wrote. No, first they were. Yes, the Jedi trainer. I really liked the moment of the book. Of course, the protocol does not differ, but the beginning of the book was about that the combat medic is responsible for sanitary safety in his platoon. And for me, it was just such a type. These are obvious moments, but the fact that someone wrote it, it was generally great that the combat medic should teach his platoon to wash their hands, so that then you don't run into everyone on the pyramids. Yes, well, such moments. It will be scary later. Courses. It is possible to read literature. Well, maybe it makes sense, but not everything will be understood. No one will ask a question if something is not clear and discuss this topic. Therefore, courses are better. And there are courses in principle in every city. If you want, you can find them. There are instructors who teach the civilian population. Therefore, courses are definitely better. Literature. It is not understood by a civilian person who will Google it all the time. No, it will be a mess in your head. A person in accessible language will explain it all. But still, before the course, I would read the deployed meds. In fact, when you go to the course, you know how the American format of preparation for the lecture is. You don't go to the lecture to listen. It will direct your mind in that direction. My favorite phrase is yes, but no. At some point, it will still be necessary to choose, learn, and therefore start reading deployed meds. As our only resource, we all agree that we no longer read anything about tactical medicine, except for the official recommendations of the committee. Well, no, we do not agree. We agree. At least more. In Mariupol, before the full-scale Azov held courses for the civilian population. We went to schools. This practice has always been there, since 2015. Well, of course, you can't prepare a civilian person for a shooting, as they say. Of course, but at least when they were more or less ready, they chose their own panic. Then they already started acting according to what we taught them, and it brought its own results. Blood. Blood. Let's all say together that we will shed blood for Azov. Come on, Hassan advised me. According to the current legislation of Ukraine, if the Moscow and the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine allow blood to be shed to the hospital level, then we will happily start doing it, because it makes sense and saves a lot of lives. The Ministry of Defense, the National Guard of Ukraine, the Ministry of Internal Affairs, this should be legal. The most controversial question, I say as a person who deals with this issue from all sides, from the tactical medicine side, from the civil medicine side, the popularization of this process is blood. Because we have a little bit of hay in our heads, and we sometimes think that instead of blood, we can pour water into a person, and everything will be okay. Or gelatin. It will not be okay. It will not be okay. Because the function of blood is not only in the vessel. It has a lot of different functions that do not replace anything. Transport, then thermoregulation. Because what is this? This is the mood of death. And better than blood, there is nothing better than blood that can be poured into the wounded. Because if we pour the same Jack, or linger, or physical, there are no uniform elements. It's all the same that there will be a jar with glue that we will dilute with water. And the properties of glue, they will all be lost. With blood, it is similar. If you dilute blood with ordinary water, then the volume is the same, but the quality of what flows through the vessels will be minimal. This is how we restore it. And we do not have qualified doctors. We do not have qualified personnel. So learn. Just learn, because this is the skill of a combat medic. A combat medic should be able to drain blood and fill blood in America. Just bring a live jar of blood with you. I'm a normal minus. I'm looking for a plasma. A little more questions about probably painkillers, because people have a little different opinions about painkillers than painkillers. We almost gave up the whole thing with Nalfin. Oh, yes. We gave it up. We fought, and fought. But now we have a new topic, that we are not painkillers at all. When we fought Nalfin, we fought not only Nalfin, we fought everything. Yes, I had an accident when I was in the hospital. I will not name which hospital, but when a person demanded an answer from me why I did not inject Nalfin, when the person had a partial traumatic amputation of the phalangemism. There was an explosion nearby, but the person felt fine. Why did I not inject metaclopramide and dexamethasone? Dexamethasone, too. But I look at him. I understand that he is a person with education, with experience, or something else. But, excuse me, but these are the drugs of my choice. I can inject them, I cannot inject. This is my decision. And I see that in this situation, there is no symptomatics, so that I even think about these drugs, and I had such a scandal that went beyond our communication. At least just inject without pain. Only when there are indicators of acute pain. Yes, you are a person on the scale. Do we forget about the pain scale? Yes, there is a 10-point scale, and he tells you 10 immediately. We will never say that I will endure. There were many cases. The guy said that I am fine. It hurts me, but I endure. I'm fine. Never anything. And here we go back to the TUX protocol. If two people from the same unit meet somewhere on the positions, roughly speaking, the hospitalier and the OSIVETs, if everyone works within the framework, one protocol, then I do not need to say that I need this, that. That is, people understand what they are doing. And if everyone will have a normal protocol, then it will be quite effective. Very often it turns out that, well, not very often. Again, this is Mariupol. In Mariupol, we work with the doctors of other units. And since we all worked according to the TUX protocol, we all understood each other from half word. To be honest, I had cases when I worked with doctors from different units. There were no conflicts at all. Everything was fine. The only thing is that that's how it turned out. I had cases when I was asked by Libofin. I had such questions. I had no authority, but I asked my doctor to go and tell me that this is not how it should be. We should not work like this. I heard a lot of stories. For example, there are very high-level medical services, and there are completely low-level services. They use blood, and when their soldiers get to someone not so experienced, they just started doing it so that only they take their soldiers, but they can also take strangers, and strangers happen. Strangers are like children, I understand. We did not refuse to help anyone, be it civilians or joint units. We do one thing. The only thing is that at the beginning of the full-scale war, on the 24th, when we were in Mariupol, the guys who went to join the air defense, how many of them were there? They took a medical course for 1 or 2 days, and they did not respond at all to what the protocol was. We had a little disagreement about what we were doing, and then, when we actually trained them, we had some time to get to know them. They said, we will work like this. The person understood that the situation was not very pleasant, and they listened to our guys, who as a regular soldier could completely learn the ACT protocol. At that time it was ACT, all combatants, and they, in principle, derived from this, and it was comfortable for us to work. We are pushing back our ACT protocol because it is a thing that is written in blood, written in experience and time. Well, at least, as you said, when we were in Mariupol, I also had such a situation when we were at it, a joint unit, and they just came up to me and said, well, at least teach us something. And I had, well, as it were, we were in positions in our free time, as protocol, so that they could already work with us in the same language. And just as you said, whether there were any problems, I think that even if there were problems with improper help, if a person is brought alive at least to us, then there will be high probability that we will be able to help him again, just following the protocol. You can just follow the protocol, provide help in a proper way. I saw some consequences, not very correct work of the doctors. When the guys took out the wounded, the eye was wounded, cotton wool was applied to the eye. And how to do this work? Tell me. You can't do this work. You have to forget about it. And so, A little bit so super. Yes. Very specific. Confused. For some reason, I was scared that he would take a catheter and strangle me in the neck. No, in my case, he was very scared. When we took the blindfold off his eyes, he saw Azov chevrons. He panicked. He thought he was done. We will provide help, because if our guys brought him to us wounded, then he is needed. Every prisoner is needed. We will provide help. I provided help. I remember now. By the way, a tanker. He was thrown there, and our guys pulled him out of the fire. He had 2 serious gunshot wounds, and we provided him with medical help. I wanted him to survive, and we tried. We had a deficit in antibiotics. We still had our deficit of ceftriax. We dragged him then, and everything healed very well with prayers. I remember bringing him Snickers, cigarettes. Well, we all said goodbye to life there. Well, subjectively, it was so. I think that if I have such a case, then I will also provide complete assistance. Because we are different. Because we are different. Well, it's just your job. You have to do your job professionally. Yes, this is basically experience and acquired skills that you learn in the closest possible conditions to reality. That is you. My guts there. My blood. All this is used in order to, firstly, a person who will be trained. He firstly did not know whether it was real or not, and already at least morally prepared to wait for it. But in fact, there are a lot of wounds that you really will never be able to just imitate on the usual. Yes, to imitate on the usual treatments. And you can see such wounds that you never in your life thought that they could be. But in fact, such can be seen. Well, what I told you on the first all-Ukrainian forum on the production of immunity to such injuries, we can do only in this way. People who have medical education have the right to go to the morgue, have the right to go to the reanimation, to the incineration department on legal grounds. A person who does not have medical education does not have the right to sit next to it, at least to see what it is and how it all happens. And it would be nice to somehow systematize it at the legislative level. But again, who else will always find everything I can say about this situation? In fact, I was a little scared when I was a child. I studied at the biology faculty. When I first cut off the head of a rat, I lost consciousness because it was very sad. It was like a rat, and it squeaked like that. I was like a fool. But I am very grateful to myself. Before the first rotation, when we were driving seriously, I discovered this American Atlas of Trauma. I watched the video of the operation. I was really surprised not to get lost, to understand what this military trauma can look like. But I can't say that I have ever had a question that I need to concentrate. I had a situation when I was 15 years old. I was a student of the first year when I gave the first medical help. It was a car accident. The girl was hit by a car. There was spleen trauma. There was bleeding. It was not massive, but it was. At that time I saw blood. I understood that something had to be done, and we just watched. A guy stopped. I remember. He took a first aid kit. There was a yellow bruise. We put it on. I understand now that I put it wrong, but I put it on, and I bandaged my wound. This was the first experience of my work. But to say that I was scared, or something else, I did not think about it at all. I understood that something had to be done, and I waited for the ambulance. At that time, of course, the doctors were tired. The boy was 15 years old, and all grown-ups stood and watched. It was, of course, interesting. In general, it affects. Of course, it is impossible to do it from the head, but probably in a year. Humor changes, for sure. Humor is like that. In a year, maybe you get used to it, and you treat it more calmly. Well, you take it as a job. You also treat life calmly. Well, at least a person who passed the course of a platoon doctor and has a backpack, I can tell you from personal experience that he raises the fighting spirit of the entire unit and raises, so to speak, the fighting spirit of the fighters, because they think that if there is a person with a backpack next to them, then they work more confidently. That is, it is really visible. If you want to be a guarantee of this confidence, the assault guard of the Azov brigade invites you to work. If you have experience, we are waiting for you. You will be a guarantee just for everyone. But in general, doctors, if you are a military man, I talk a lot with combat doctors, with those who ride on cases. Here are doctors everywhere. They are psychologically different from other units, from other fighters. Here are always doctors, but they are not like everyone else. In fact, even from civilian doctors, you know it's always on the verge of death. It still leaves a mark on the face, one way or another, and can't just happen. But it seems to me that when there were the first serious combat tasks, when I had a soldier, something serious, so I was tired. It was the first feeling in my life that I did not make any mistakes in the choice. Now I am where I need to be. I am not ashamed to be myself. Now it seems to me that I am doing the best of what I do in life. And doctors, I think that sometimes we have such a tendency that on social networks we have different opinions and we have not yet rebuilt into one system, and we understand that we always know what is good and what is bad. This is the thing that needs to be buried. Because we all have it. The 9th year of war, we all have to exchange experience. Not that I know everything. I will not teach anyone there. On the contrary, we should have normal communication. This is an appeal to all doctors, combat doctors, evacuees, that we need to share experience. We need to say that this works. This does not work. This is a demonstration. Because of vests, because of bandages, because of the fact that the we designer is an exception. It is necessary not to disband the community, but, on the contrary, to create and strengthen it. No one has ever come to Bakhmut or to Mariupol to work badly. No one goes with the thought that now I will go and kill people with some nonsense. That is, everyone really sincerely believes that we are the best. And our real work, especially those units that are the best in medicine, and we really have significant units in the field of medicine. And this is the National Guard. There are certain units that really stand out. It is to take people to ourselves, to open stop points for others. It is generally such a magical phenomenon when there are 3 to 4 brigades all together at the stop point. You see how one brigade that came objectively weaker, ordered a cool inventory, began to work, and then all the units are kept. Everyone is exchanged. No matter how strange it sounds, it is a war of connecting people. It is necessary to have maximum communication with the stop points, with the adjacent units, with the doctors who are on medvac, who are on casevac, and with those doctors who are simply on combat posts as combat doctors. If there is this communication, then there will be maximum correct work and maximum fully provided assistance from the minimum link to the hospital itself. By the way, it is ideal when, for example, I saw such a tumultuous situation when the guys were standing in a very dangerous place, such a front line, and another brigade came and said, "Let's roll back, and we will stand here." The brigade has been standing for 5 months. New ones come and say, "Roll back. We will stand here." You will stand 20 kilometers away. And it is really very offensive when the doctors come and say, "Let's replace you." And they really agree on this. And then from time to time, the anesthesiologists, the surgeons, change the rotation between themselves. And it is very offensive when there is such an understanding. This is something very warm and good. Or, for example, a brigade was leaving, and they had blood left. The first reaction of Valina Mikhailova was to ask who to take away, not to return, because she wrote to me too. And they took her, by the way, to Troika, and this is also such an offensive case, because they did not have direct contact, but just agreed and did it. And it seems to me that it is time to create an adequate community of normal anesthesiologists, normal combat doctors, so that there is always a possibility to ask, exchange, do something. Because we all do one common cause. Yes, because I understand how our guys are treated. We also work with their brothers. And everything is great. Everyone is doing a common cause. Everyone is doing an important cause. You can ask the developers to make an eMedic application and ask for a discount so that they make the design for this site or application without the heat. All that we can talk about, because there is one cool project that I want to launch pilotly, because you are aware, you are inspired. Join the call. I am not for the call, but I know that there are conscious people here. They always go for adequate communication. There are no delays. You can just talk. Who am I? I am a girl, Rena. You can write to the eMedic, and everyone communicates normally. And this is their first step to adequate medicine. Because adequate medicine is adequate statistics, and it is a common experience. So join the call. Well done. That's all. Thank you. Tell my commander. Tell my commander. Tell my commander. Yes, yes, yes. He is right there.